You're on board KCAA's Inland Talk Express. KCAA, Loma Linda, 1050 a.m., the station that leaves no listener behind.
Hello and welcome, world, to the E Factor Show on KCAA Radio. And I have my special guest here, Harold Weber. And you've been here before, and so I want you to just tell us a little about yourself.
Okay, well, I love your platform, what you do, and how you're trying to impact culture, our world. Cornelius, it's just phenomenal. But again, I'm glad to be back for a second time. I'm Harold K. Weber. I'm Dora's boy, also known as Pastor Weber. I'm a senior pastor of Living Way Christian Fellowship in Moreno Valley. I'm also a marriage and family therapist. I love what I do. I try to impact people in a positive way. And again, I appreciate. I must have did okay the first time. You're inviting me back a second time.
Well, you did great. You did great.
Okay,
and
well,
you're a fan favorite. Just to let you know.
Okay.
Don't take it too. But you're actually
good.
really a fan favorite. And you're one of my favorites too, because even though, like you say, I go to your church and you're my pastor, but it's like almost when we met. Some people you just meet and you
just
connect
a kinship,
to.
yeah, just a
right,
kinship,
right.
Yeah.
Because I always tell people that you remind me of my older brother.
Okay.
In a way.
Well, I got to be the oldest.
Well, because he was my older brother.
Okay.
No, my actual older brother.
Okay,
you remind me of him.
Okay.
And so. I said, okay, all right, good, because, we're funny and stuff, but at the same time, you're very serious, obviously, because you're a pastor, family marriage therapist. And so what we're going to do, we're going to put all three of those things to work today.
Let's do it, Cornelius.
Okay.
I'm excited to be here.
And so this is our third and final Black History show. The first one we started off regarding our identity. So
is Black History going to be over after?
No, but this will be my last show for this month. So
History.
I'll be over.
You'll still be black.
But no, I'm always going to be black.
You're
and
going to be
proud.
black. Okay.
I started off black and proud, and that's where I'll end, unless I get one of those diseases and I start turning white or something.
Okay.
I'll be like,
I'm not going there.
No. I'm just saying. But other than that, that's the plan.
Okay.
And so we went through all the different phases of our identity, like being the slave, then the ex-slave, and then we were the colored, the Negro, and the black, and now we're the African American.
Okay.
And so we did that. So then last week I had Carl Dameron on you. Of course, you know Carl.
Oh yeah, I know Carl.
You know Carl.
Great communications expert. Carl
yes, he is
a marketing a guru. He's been in the game for a long time. Carl Dameron. Nice, and he has a powerful testimony of how he was miraculously healed. I believe he had a stroke or some kind of challenging health situation, and Carl has bounced back. Yeah, he's doing well.
He is. And as a matter of fact, on another show that we're going to be doing, because we're, like I said, this show ends today, but we're going to pick back up in April with so many different shows. So then we're going to have not only you back on, but Carl on, and we're going to have us on as a group.
At the same time?
At the same time.
Oh, that'll be dynamic.
At the same time.
He's a dynamic individual.
Right, and so we'll talk about that later, what we'll be talking about. But as he brought up a lot of special points, like the one thing he stressed and talked about was, of course, him growing up with a single mother.
Oh, wow.
Because his dad passed when he was 6 years old. And so we often talk about the single mother and all this, but, a lot of times a single mother is looked at it in a negative way.
Yeah, they're stigmatized. Stigmatized, and what we ought to do is support and encourage single mothers. No one is going to deny that a healthy, let me qualify, a healthy dual family situation with both a man and a woman in the relationship to guide and direct the children is best. But again, there's so many single parents, both male and female, that have done a phenomenal job, and it's because they've created an environment. They've created an environment, and there's an old adage that says it takes a village to raise a child, and a lot of single parents have that village around them, whether it be church or some kind of social recreational center. A lot of people come through the Boys and Girls Clubs. And so, again, we don't want to stigmatize single mothers, and because we don't know what caused their singleness. Could have been a death, could have been just not a good, healthy relationship. But, yeah, Carl has done well. He's done well. Hats off to his mom.
Right. And what you said, touched on was critical. There's a lot of black single dads.
Absolutely.
Because, like that's another stigma that black men aren't good dads.
Right.
Black men don't take care of their kids.
Right.
But there's a lot of things that we don't put on the news or we don't put at the forefront.
Exactly.
Because I'm not going to say everybody now. See, every time we said we got to give disclosure, I'm not going to say everybody.
Right.
But a lot of people, no matter what the situation, if you black, you're going to be stigmatized.
Absolutely.
And so even last year, there were over almost 1.5 million single black dads.
Wow.
1.5 million single black dads.
Wow.
You know, when they do the census and all that stuff.
And you don't hear that. You only hear about the deadbeat fathers that are not financially engaged or involved. You hear the downside, but we've got to celebrate, and I love what you do. We've got to celebrate all the positives in our society, in our culture. And again, single dads, bravo to them that have done their very best to create villages around their children as well.
Right. And then what you said too, like with the single black mother, we don't know why she's single.
Right.
Like say in Carl's case, she was single because her husband passed.
Right.
And that's why she was single. So when you don't know the story, I think we shouldn't look at them like we always say, well, you look at somebody, you have 4 or 5 kids and you're single. First thing you're thinking, oh, why she has all these kids and she don't have a man to help take care of them.
Right.
Or she has all these kids and now she has to get government help or something like that. You don't know how she got to that point.
Exactly. What did they say? Don't judge a person unless you've walked a mile in their shoes.
Right.
And so we have to be careful with that because singleness is not a negative thing all the time either.
Right.
Because a person can be single but still being supported by that co-parent. They still could be being supported. That relationship just didn't work. And even though a person is single, it doesn't mean that child should have a single effect in a sense in their life to where they don't have 2 people that love them and support them no matter what.
Right. But we sometimes even stigmatize the child.
Oh, absolutely.
Like something with the child, and you put that on the child. Oh, you only have one mother or father, whatever the case is. So now this kid, he goes around with a complex sometime, and and we as grown people, a lot of times we do things or say things around our kids.
Yeah.
You may not say it to the kid or to the woman, but you'll say it around your kids. You know, our kids are, oh, my mama said you this or that, And so now you've hurt the woman and you've hurt the child, unintentional.
Right.
But like you said, unless you've walked in that person's shoes, it's really hard for you to know or understand it. And there's all kind of single mothers.
All kinds and I think also, Cornelius, to that point, it's, in a single situation, I believe it's a divine design for a child to have both male and female influence, however you want to categorize that male or female influence. But I think it's also important that if you don't have either that mother or that father, that you have somebody that's like a mother and like a father. And I think we ought to celebrate those people as well, because there's so many people will say, hey, I may not have had my father, my bio dad in my life, but the man at the rec center, he was like a father to us. And sometimes you find some of these community heroes that are like a father, like coaches. A coach sometimes, if a kid has a single parent, a coach sometimes becomes a father figure, or if it's a female coach, a mother figure.
Right.
And so we don't want to discount what our heroes do in our community. Like you go out and you speak to youth. Sometimes they say what's called at-risk youth. I know you even go into the juvenile justice system, and you're bringing a perspective of what's needed. And sometimes you may be looked at as a father figure or a big brother figure or uncle figure. And I think those things are really, really important. So if not a father in the home or not access to a father or a mother, to have somebody that can come along and be like a father, or man, when I lost my mother, she was like a mother to me. And we just have to celebrate the resources that we have in our community.
Right. And that's part of what we talked about last week too, Carl and I, is that mentors, how important mentors are.
Oh, extremely important.
How important mentors are. And I told him that in a sense, that I feel like our generation, they say we're middle age. So does that mean if I'm almost 63, will I end up being like almost 26 or something if I'm midway?
I don't know. That's a curveball right there. See,
but
I'm not sure.
Right. But so I think a lot of times when we talk about the single mother, and be it mother or father or what have you, that us as men, we need to step up and step in.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I say in a way that we're failing our young men, our youth, because if there's no father in the house,
right.
The mother, I'm going to give mothers a big old hand clap, even single fathers, because for a minute I was a single father.
Right.
And when you're trying to do all these things, raise the kids, especially a lot of time they have to work, or you have multiple kids and you have to do all these things. And one thing the pandemic taught us was appreciate the teachers. We always say stuff about the school,
Hats
this,
off
the
to
teacher, this. But once the kids was at home and
exactly.
we were trying to do the teaching, we learned.
Exactly.
And so, you take these young men, and where are they learning from? How to be a man.
Right.
The mother does the best she can. And so what happens a lot of times is whatever man figure reaches out to them, that's who they're drawn to.
Right.
And so if all you have as a man figure is the negative type,
right,
that's where you're drawn to, because now they're showing you some love.
Sure, because they're needy.
Right.
And that's why the data is real clear that some, again, single-parent households, that man or boy or girl or boy, they're subject to connect to maybe negative groups.
Right.
People get involved in gangs and all types of negative behavior and lifestyles because they want to feel, accepted or needed, or again, that mentor,
right,
if you would. And so it's very important that we have both influences, male and female, but we live in a crazy world right now where it's sometimes even difficult to distinguish a male role from a female role, and how then do you influence a child? Is it necessary to identify different roles or even different genders? Because we have now, how do you deal with this? We have same-sex relationships,
right,
that are raising children, maybe two men or two women. And how then do you determine if there's necessity for male input or female? I mean, it can get goofy, man. It can really, really get goofy. And I don't want to even touch that subject, Cornelius, because we didn't come here to talk about that.
No, but still, the thing we have to realize is that we're talking about Black history.
Okay.
And so the most important part of Black history to me is Black future.
I agree.
Black
I agree
future.
100%.
So it doesn't matter, Black, African American, same sex, no sex, whatever.
Right.
Our goal, like we said, we're here to influence, impact, and inspire.
And create a better opportunity for those that are coming behind us,
right,
as we remember those that came before us.
Right.
And so we've got to carry the spirit of our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, that work ethic, that family is everything,
right,
and keeping the family together as much as you can, because when we came through slavery, one of the more demoralizing things that happened to us as a people, they sought to separate us. I mean, you would have a mother get sold on an auction block, a father get sold, separated. So family is important, period, but especially to a community of African Americans, to where we were disenfranchised and we were separated from family. And so we really have to instill that sense of family value, learn how to care for one another and take care of one another as best we can. Right.
But, it's when you say separated, I mean, a lot of times I've came across people this day, and they're saying, well, the reason why this happens is because they separate us. The reason why the fathers are this because they separate us. I say that may have been then, but even like we talk about with marriage, you can be in the house but still distant, still absent.
Sure.
Still absent.
Sure.
Like a lot of times the one parent, be it the mother or the father, they're doing the majority of the work. They're cooking, they're cleaning, they're working. And so you're there in body, but not in mind and spirit. So you're still absent. And so when it comes to the marriage part, that's an issue too. I talk to a lot of people, because I go around and talk to people. I just be like, hey, what's going on in your life?
All right.
That's
sometimes that's a good thing.
Yeah, sometimes once they start telling you, be saying, man, I wish I wouldn't have asked.
Right.
I wish I wouldn't have asked.
You don't have that kind of time.
Right, because they got a lot going on.
Right.
But still, you learn by talking to people. I'm sure as a therapist, the first thing you need to do is establish some kind of relationship.
Absolutely.
Where people can feel comfortable talking to you.
Absolutely. We call it rapport.
Rapport, okay.
But, so many people, I mean, if you go back, 200 years where we were an enslaved people, we did things for survival.
Right.
We did things for survival. It's even determined that we maybe even over-discipline our children for a sake of survival because we didn't want them to be in a position to where they had to be disciplined by the slave owners or the oppressors. And some of that's carried over into lifestyles today. Now, as a free people, we've got to really be free, and we've got to free our mind from some of the chains that bind us to the past, some of the negative things. But what's happened is it's no longer a sense of family survival. People are becoming more independent. So inside the home, nobody's really taught us how to raise children. We kind of do it based on what mama and them did and everything mama and them did. I mean, there was some trauma involved in that. And so we tend to pass on the trauma instead of sitting down and learning how to be emotionally available. Because a lot of times, you were talking about dads, a lot of times the knock on dads is, oh yeah, they'll go to work, but I really can't talk to dad. Because dad's form of showing affection is, look, I go to work, I bust my butt for 12 hours a day, I bring the check home, there's food in that refrigerator.
Doing my job.
I don't have time to be sensitive.
Right.
I don't have time to hear about your issues because I got to get up and hit that clock, punch that clock in the morning. But we've got to learn this new word called emotional intelligence. I've got to learn to listen to you and find the spots that hurt or you're troubled getting through in both a young man and a young woman.
Right.
And sometimes as men, because we share our feelings differently than females, sometimes we're not emotionally available, and even the only emotion that we can show sometimes is frustration or anger, or then we just shut down altogether. And that's a recipe for some challenges.
Right. Like you say, we're taking this and that, and we go, well, when I grew up, this happened and that happened with my parents, so I don't want to do the same. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to pick this up on the other side of this commercial break. We'll be right back.
Has openings for 1-hour talk shows. If you want to host a radio show, now is the time. Make KCAA your flagship station. Our rates are affordable and our services are second to none. We broadcast to a population of 5 million people. Plus, we stream and podcast on all major online audio and video systems. If you've been thinking about broadcasting a weekly radio program on real radio plus the internet, contact our CEO at 281-599-9800. 281-599-9800. You can Skype your show from your home to our Redlands, California studio, where our live producers and engineers are ready to work with you personally. A radio program on KCAA is the perfect work from home avocation in these stressful times. Just type kcaaradio.com into your browser to learn more about hosting a show on the best station in the nation, or call our CEO for details. 281-599-9800.
Life is filled with unexpected challenges, and when grief strikes, Off the Chain Alliance is here for you. We provide wraparound services for grief and funeral poverty, offering condolences and assistance with end-of-life preparation. Visit us now at offthechainalliance.org to learn more about how we support those facing loss. Help us make a difference. Support our programs by donating today. Together, we can bring comfort in times of sorrow.
And now, the voices of KCAA with an exciting announcement.
Want to hear NBC News or KCAA anywhere you go? Well, now there's an app for that.
KCAA is celebrating 25 years and our silver anniversary with a brand new app.
The new KCAA app is now available on your smart device, cell phone, in your car, or any place.
Just search KCAA on Google Play or in the Apple Store.
One touch and you can listen on your car radio, Bluetooth device, Android Auto, or Apple
Car Play.
Catch the KCAA buzz in your earbuds or on the streets, celebrating 25 years of talk, news, and excellence with our new KCAA app.
Just do it and download it. KCAA, celebrating 25 years.
Hello and welcome back to the E Factor Show. I'm Cornelius, the Renaissance Man, with my special guest, Harold K. Weber.
Hey, that's me.
Before we went to break, we were talking about the difference that sometimes, we don't want to do like our parents and this and that. But sometimes it has a negative effect because our thing is, well, I don't want to do to my kids what my parents did to me. And so instead of being a disciplinarian and what have you, now we want to be friends.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a mistake.
Right.
That's kind of a mistake. They have friends that you have to help them navigate and manage. You've got to be the leader. You've got to be that voice that guides them and disciplines them, because you know how difficult the world is, society is. But we still have to be careful because we have things that our parents didn't have to deal with. When I was growing up, television went off at midnight.
That's right.
I mean, there was nothing else to listen to.
Right. The music, come on.
The national anthem would play, and even radio stations
had a cutoff
would go off.
Right.
But now in the world of constant content, we've got social media where it's never turned off. They've got video games. You can go online and play video games with people you don't even know.
Halfway around the world. And so we've got different dynamics to deal with, and we've got to learn how to protect our children from information overload or negative information that will affect your ability to guide them. And because now they're listening to somebody else. They're listening to, they could be listening to Drake or some rapper. They could be listening to some sports icon because they have a lot of influence. Right.
We didn't have that kind of access when we were growing up. So whatever the rules were in the house, that reigned. And we didn't have anything to compare it with because all the parents were the same.
Right.
All the fathers were the same. They all went to work, they all came home, and they all just wanted peace and quiet.
That's right.
And so it's a lot different now.
Right, because even, like I said, they have all these influences, but a lot of times they have these shows they can go to, and I say they disguise the show. They say it's a kid show or something for children, but if you ever sit down and listen to the things they say and do, the curse words, the images, and everything they're trying to pump into their mind, you're like, I was even watching a cartoon that was on a TV one time, and I'm looking at it. I'm watching this cartoon. I'm like, oh, little kitty cartoon. And next thing you know, Johnny's mad because he has a crush on Mark, and and all these things, and you're wondering why, and they're shooting and they're doing all this stuff. This is supposed to be for kids.
It's a different world, and parenting is. Again, it's got to be upgraded based on the world that we live in. But again, we don't want to throw the baby away with the bathwater. There's some foundational things that our parents encouraged us to do, especially if you had parents that were somewhat spiritually minded. Maybe they attended a local church, which was a community, and they were to, pass on to you a belief of a higher power, of God, and where you could receive peace from in healthy environments. We, especially with African Americans, we got through what we came through because we were a spiritual people. Church was, again, a big part of our lives. And I know that somebody can come back and say, well, church was used to keep us in bondage, and we were with a white Jesus. But again, if you were to take all that stuff away, God is God, and we're the ones that put faces on him, but he's for people. And I think we have to pass on certain things of our heritage.
Right.
And obviously our kids are going to make their own decision, but I want to give them an opportunity to at least make a decision based upon how we've lived in front of them, based upon what we say we believe. And so you don't want to throw everything out. But again, we're always upgrading our parenting skills because the teachers are upgrading their teaching skills. And we're finding that we really have to connect to children, because all the children that was in your house, everybody wasn't the same.
Everybody sometimes you wonder, how can all these kids come from the same parents, two parents, but they're all so different.
Also different, and they all have different pulls and desires in their life. I mean, how can you say, well, what happened to Earl? Man, Earl raising the
That was
same
my
family.
brother, man. Leave Earl alone.
Yeah, okay. Raising the same family,
yes.
but chose a different path. He got connected to, a crime, a life of crime. And was that a failure on the part of the parents? No, not necessarily. Earl just had an appetite for a certain lifestyle that may not have been noticed early enough to begin to change that. I know when we were growing up, man, they had a remedy for if you were finding yourself in a negative situation. Man, they'd send you to grandmama. They'd send you down south, or they'd send you somewhere in a strong system that had greater boundaries to where you didn't have as much stimulation. There wasn't no gangs in Arkansas back then. And so all you got to deal is you're going to go out there and milk a cow or something like that. That'll put you in check.
Yeah. And what you said is important because, I grew up in a house, my mother and father, they never smoked, never drank, never cursed. We were in church. I mean, great, great parents, beyond great. But when I was young, I just had this desire to smoke.
Right.
To be cool.
Right.
To, do all this stuff. And I know it didn't come from them, so you can't blame the parents all the time. Like you said, it's just something in you as an individual.
And your peers.
Right, and my peers,
you. And what society, isn't that crazy, man? You mentioned smoking. Do you realize that all along the tobacco industry understood that smoking was hazardous for your health?
Right.
And they glamorize it. If you go back and look at some of the older movies, I mean, everybody smoked. I mean, it looks so cool.
Everybody smoked.
And it's killing them. As a matter of fact, the federal government had to come in and force the tobacco industry to put on the side of the cigarette packages, caution, cigarette smoking may be hazardous to your health. I think they've since changed that and says cigarette smoking has been found to cause cancer. They had to be made to do it. So, we live in a world that appeals to our lower man, our lower self.
Right.
So you thought smoking was cool. When I was growing up, man, I couldn't even smoke, but I thought it was cool, and I wanted to be so cool that I smoked even though I would get sick after smoking.
Right.
And that's crazy.
But you were cool for a few seconds.
I was cool for a few seconds until I started throwing up.
Right. And even what you said about our history for church goals and spiritual goals. I mean, now, especially today, there's so few young people in church.
Yeah, there's been a flight. There's been a flight from church, and I think it's by design. I mean, and call me what you want to call me, but I just believe there are free radical forces, good and evil, in the world today. And I think that we have to understand that to pull people away from spiritual basis, that's a setup. But the church has to understand how to respond to that and not be so stuck in a certain way.
Right.
Not to be so stuck in a certain way, not to be so legalistic, but be willing to open it up and be inclusive with the young people. But from the standpoint, obviously I'm a pastor, so I have a different perception than others. I still think that there's a benefit in fidelity. I still think there's a benefit in children being chaste. I still think there's a benefit in not being promiscuous. I still think there's a benefit as looking at your body as sacred and belonging to God and as spiritual, and not out here finding value in, your body or sex or whatever that can be. And I think there's some, and I'm not an old fogey by any stretch of the imagination, but I think there's a level of morality that we have to be able to convey to our young people that's not staunched in legalism or all the can't do's and you can't do this, but giving the reasons why it's important to consider a different lifestyle.
Right. Even like you say, they talk about the Christianity was a way to keep us enslaved and all that stuff. But the question
and to a certain extent, it was abused.
Right. It was abused, definitely abused, still abused today. But it doesn't matter if you say, well, they present Jesus as a white man, he was black. Okay, so if Jesus is black, his word is still the same.
Yeah.
His word is still the same. No matter what, if it's black, you change the color, it's still the same. But what are you doing? And I think a lot of part of the problem too is that now, like we say with social media and all these things, whatever happens, it's out there. So now you have all these religious leaders who are supposed to be religious leaders. They're out here, they're doing worse than the other people. And so the youth, they look at them and say, wait a minute, you want me to go to this church where this man has millions of dollars, his flock's buying him planes, trains, and automobiles, but he's doing the same thing I'm doing, but he's undercover with it.
You see, Cornelius.
Whoa, but as soon as something happens, Pastor, it's blurted over there. And I think that has an effect too.
Here's the challenge with that.
Right.
It's an overgeneralization because, again, what we tend to do is we tend to look at maybe the high-profile individual, or we'll find, we live in an evil world. People make decisions, and they're always not the decisions in their best interest or the best interest of other people. But what we don't do is we don't highlight those folks that are doing the work, those folks that are, as we talked about, single parents.
Right.
We don't highlight the dad that even though he may not be with the mom, that he's making sure he's getting those kids, he's making sure that he's there, he's available. We tend to highlight the negative. So I'm going to say, for those men and women that I know that are involved in community work, especially from a spiritual perspective, then there are more that are doing the right thing than are doing the wrong thing. But good news doesn't travel like bad news, man.
Right.
Bad news, man. Bad news travels like that.
The speed of light.
I mean, I can be doing the good, give my body to be burned, blessing all the children, but let me make one mistake, that's going to overshadow all the good that I've done. And so we have to be careful because character is important, but at the same time, we just don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say all pastors, all churches, all this and all that, and we don't want to do that. That's just my
all right, we're gonna pick this up on the side of this commercial. This is the E Factor with Cornelius Bryant and Harold K. Weber. We'll be right back.
Radio has openings for 1-hour talk shows. If you want to host a radio show, now is the time. Make KCAA your flagship station. Our rates are affordable and our services are second to none. We broadcast to a population of 5 million people. Plus, we stream and podcast on all major online audio and video systems. If you've been thinking about broadcasting a weekly radio program on Real Radio plus the internet, contact our CEO at 281-599-9800. 281-599-9800. You can Skype your show from your home to our Redlands, California studio where our live producers and engineers are ready to work with you personally. A radio program on KCAA is the perfect work from home avocation in these stressful times. Just type kcaaradio.com into your browser to learn more about hosting a show on the best station in the nation, or call our CEO for details, 281-599-9800.
Life is filled with unexpected challenges, and when grief strikes, Off the Chain Alliance is here for you. We provide wraparound services for grief and funeral poverty, offering condolences and assistance with end-of-life preparation. Visit us now at offthechainalliance.org to learn more about how we support those facing loss. Help us make a difference. Support our programs by donating today. Together, we can bring comfort in times of sorrow.
And now, the voices of KCAA with an exciting announcement.
Want to hear NBC News or KCAA anywhere you go? Well, now there's an app for that.
KCAA is celebrating 25 years and our silver anniversary with a brand new app.
The new KCAA app is now available on your smart device, cell phone, in your car, or any place.
Just search KCAA on Google Play or in the Apple Store.
One touch and you can listen on your car radio, Bluetooth device, Android Auto, or Apple CarPlay.
Catch the KCAA buzz in your earbuds or on the streets, celebrating 25 years of talk, news, and excellence with our new KCAA app.
Just do it and download it. KCAA, celebrating 25 years.
All right, welcome back to the E Factor with the Renaissance man Cornelius and my man Harold K. Weber. Hey. Before we left off, we were talking about how bad news travels. And that's the problem right now is because good news don't make money.
Oh man, no.
Bad news makes money. That's why it travels so quickly. You know,
it travels, and we're, you know, you would think you have enough of a life of your own that you don't have the time to be in that kind of gossipy cycle. But more and more people, because of maybe we're not doing what we need to do,
right?
We're drawn to gossip, man. We're drawn to just information about other people that won't impact our life at all. As a matter of fact, one of your, I'm going to say colleague, because they're in the same industry you're in, Shannon Sharp. I know you know who that is.
Yeah,
He's got Club Shay Shay, and he's on ESPN with Stephen A. Smith. I mean, he had Cat Williams, which is a comedian.
Right.
50 million views, and Cat was only spewing bad news.
Oh,
negative
really
information about other people.
Right.
And it blew up. But if he had been sitting there talking about how many schools he opened and all the good things, it wouldn't have got as many views. So if we've got something good, we've got to be intentional about marketing it and taking it to the masses, because again, with all these blogs and vlogs and talk shows, most of it's gossipy, negative news, with the exception of one young lady, and I think her name is Tabitha. I don't know her that well, and I know she has products. She's kind of like the Black Martha Stewart.
Oh.
And she's got a platform that's really positive. But other than some of the cooking shows, a lot of the blogs and the podcasts are basically gossip stations.
Right. And they're there and
it's bad news. It's bad news. It's on the backs of people that are not at their best. And I just choose not to. I mean, I just choose to look at the glass half full and to try to be positive, because we got more than enough negative in the world today with the political season coming up, and as you know, because this is a field that you work in, the data on some of our African American youth, the data on how we're doing financially, how we're doing in all these different areas, we tend to fall behind. And the question is why? And I know the questions you always ask: is there something that we're doing as a people to contribute to it?
Right.
Or what can we do? What can we do to offset the divisiveness in our own community? And what can we do to encourage others to be more positive? Where do we get help from? And I guess I'll put the question to you, because you're out there probably as much as anybody speaking, because that's what you do. How do we, what's the answer? What's the answer, Renaissance man?
Well, let me ask you a question. If you grew up in a certain environment and you looked at it a certain way, from the time you were born, that stigma, as we always say, we call it stigma, but it's something else that's on you. So we have these names for them, even as blacks, we have names for other people. Oh, they're ghetto.
Okay.
They're ghetto. Like you talk about what we can do for each other.
Right.
They're ghetto. And so all your life you grew up in this environment, and you're taught that you're ghetto because you live here. You're looked at as ghetto. So what does that do to your mentality? Does your mentality say, oh, I want to be more? Your mentality goes, well, I'm ghetto, and so everybody is around me like this, so you don't see hope to get out of it.
So you just kind of fall to the bottom.
You fall to the bottom.
But you know what's interesting, though? We talk about urban culture. You want to use the term ghetto. My daughter has told me never to use that term because it stigmatizes people. But you know what? Madison Avenue, when I say Madison Avenue, the people that make money off the backs of other people, they've taken the music in our culture, they're taking hip hop, and they're used all these things that we once would call ghetto as sign-ons and tags to a lot of the commercials. They're using it and glamorizing it and making money off of it, drawing the masses in. And I think that as a community, we've got to learn to turn things positive as well.
Right.
We've got to learn how to clean up what needs to be cleaned up, because we got to think about the next generation. Because the thing that grieves my heart is when I see social media and I see some 4-year-old kid reciting some vulgarity that he's heard in a rap lyric that he doesn't even understand what he's talking about.
Right.
And I'm going like, wow, what negative indoctrination is that? And we've always talked about, the majority trying to indoctrinate us to strip our culture away from us. And now we are indoctrinating our own kids with essentially what's poisonous for them, and having them, live in this world that's fantasy that sometimes becomes reality in some of our urban centers where we see so much poverty and degradation and crime because of this, call it what you want, this ghetto thing, which is absolutely nuts. And I don't want to stigmatize anybody with the word ghetto, because it wasn't a word we created. It was a word that they created from the standpoint of redlining, and they called a particular area the ghetto, which means that, wow, that has less value. And so we got to take it and turn it around, man.
Right.
And we take that word, because they've taken words and make them mean what they want to mean. And we can take that word and we can turn it around. And we've got to find some wordsmiths out there that, if we're going to use that word, make it a beautiful thing that has a Harvard degree attached to it.
Right. Wordsmith and people smith and all smiths that uplift.
What you mean by that matters. What do you mean when you say ghetto? What does that mean?
Right.
And we've got to change some things. And so I'm one that, I'm trying to watch what I say, watch what I send out of my mouth, because I don't, if it's negative and it's going to impact our young people, I'd rather not use the word at all.
Right, exactly. Because like you said about ghetto and the way they make money, they take that, and then once it became mainstream, they're making all the money.
Oh, man.
But the people who started it, they're getting nothing out of it,
And suburban kids are bouncing to it.
Right. And they're
bouncing to it.
Right. A lot of the stuff they do, it's off somebody else's grief. They don't realize that, like somebody tell me, oh, it's telling a story.
Right.
So you're telling us, this person's telling a story of grief, but these, like you said, they're bouncing to it and they're making money off of it.
But it's a setup, and we don't tell stories. I remember growing up, and I don't know if you know this artist, but we had messengers, a man by the name of Gil Scott-Heron. And I don't know if you know Gil Scott-Heron, but he would make message songs like "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised," and he made the song. He made the song "Angel Dust," which was a message song. It says when there was that angel dust epidemic, he said, "Hey man, you got to get off of this, man.
Right.
You got to get off of this." And he made message songs that, and I think the entire rap and hip hop culture, they came out of, it was a message at first.
Right.
Talking about how great we were and coming up.
Right.
But now, man, it's, we just need to get a hold of these young babies. But then the problem is, it's all monetized and you make so much money off of it.
Right. And at the end of the day, it's at a point where I don't care who I hurt, as long as I make my money.
Man,
or who gets hurt behind it.
We got to change that.
Right. One of Martin Luther King's speeches, I think, matter of fact, it was the speech that he made the day before he died.
I've been to the mountaintop speech.
I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen
the promised land.
The promised land. He said, I may not get there with you. And so there's no more.
Yeah.
How many of us are willing to give it all?
Yeah. And I guess the question that you have to ask.
Give it all to help somebody else.
Martin was a very spiritual man.
Right.
Remember, he was a Black Baptist preacher.
Right.
Very spiritual. I believe even a prophet, modern day prophet.
Right.
And he talked about this promised land. And I think what we've got to do, if it echoes back to the books of Exodus and Joshua, the promised land was very vivid. What I mean by that, God told them what was in the promised land.
Right.
And we've got to paint a vision of what is the promise? What is it that we should look forward to? What is the dream? And we've got to paint this picture for our young people to let them see what promise looks like. And even in the promised land, when they got there, they still had to work to secure the things that God had made available for them. So we've just got to paint a better picture, and we've got to continue to be those voices.
Right.
Those voices in the wilderness, those voices in our inner cities. We've got to be like a Marvin Gaye, man. Man, what's going on? Marvin said, man, mother, what's going on?
Too many of you crying.
Can you tell me what's going on? And
right.
we really got to take a chill pill, and we've got to go, okay, There's too many of us dying. There's too many mothers crying. What's going on?
Right.
What do we need today?
Right. So we have to be willing to risk it all too.
Absolutely.
I mean, so we need to be willing to risk it all, because if we don't, you're gonna have generation after generation living that same cycle until eventually there'll be no more.
Yeah.
And I mean, we have to look at it realistically.
Yeah. And what does risk it all mean? It's really, we have to take the onus on ourselves. It's just to be the best that we can be.
Right.
And to not get caught up, and always keep the children in mind. Children in mind. And you know, I'm musical, and I remember a song. It was by, I believe George Benson wrote it first, and then I think Whitney Houston came back and sang it. It was called The Greatest of All. And she said, I believe that children are our future.
Right.
Teach them well.
Exactly.
And let them lead the way. And that's, we've got to do it. And I think what they're saying is that there was a generation that forgot the children.
Right.
That forgot to. We began to do so well, and then we just thought that they would automatically do well because we were doing well. And maybe there was a generation that forgot the children, man.
Right. And that's the thing. Teach them and let them do well.
Teach them and let them lead the way.
And matter of fact, like we were talking about with the church, you know, we have a responsibility. Like I said, with us older men, we have a responsibility. And, you know, the good thing about it is, like, on March 16th, on March 16th, we're going to have, what is it, a men's day? What are we having?
Oh, man, we're having a fantastic, we're calling it a men's fellowship, a men gathering,
Right.
gathering. We're calling it a gathering of champions.
Yes.
And we're going to come together. It's going to be held at our church on March 16th at 10 o'clock. We're going to have a breakfast. We're going to have speakers. We're going to be talking about generational wealth, but not only in the sense of economic wealth, but spiritual, emotional, and mental wealth. Because you can have all the money in the world, but be bankrupt morally.
Right.
Be bankrupt emotionally. Be bankrupt in your thinking. And I truly believe our divine purpose is to prosper and be in good health, mind, soul, and body. And that way, the sins of the fathers won't be visited upon the sons. And what we found out is you can sometimes become what you've come out of, even if you don't want to. And you can repeat, some even call it generational curses.
Right.
You can repeat some of the negative things that have been nurtured into you without you even understanding that you're operating out of that. So yes, March 16, man, thank you for saying that.
Right. And the thing about this that's good is we're not just going to have a bunch of old men there.
Oh, no.
And all that. So what we're going to do, we want to try to have these young guys.
Absolutely.
Young guys. We want young guys to come, because, see, if the young guys learn, like I say in my business, if I teach the father can go teach the kids.
And that's what it should be.
You know, and that. So it's hard to unlearn something, but what we need to do is get them to come and listen so we can talk to them. We're not going to criticize them, tell them what they're doing wrong, because a lot of these guys are doing stuff right, but all they hear is about what they're doing wrong. So we want them to come and join us. We're going to have a good time.
We're going to have a great time. As a matter of fact, it's going to be a fundraiser.
Right. Don't forget, give them the address, too, because
it's going to be a fundraiser. We're at 12125 Day Street in the city of Moreno Valley in the Canyon Springs Plaza. We're right across the parking lot from the Golden Corral, and that's March 16th. That's a Saturday. It's a fundraiser, so we're going to have a breakfast, but we're asking everyone to contribute to the fundraiser, $30 per person. And that's, man, come on, man, come on, $30, please. Our women, they have an event, and I think they charge $70.
And they sold out
every,
no room.
300 people every year.
Right, no room.
Men, we're calling you to come out, bring a friend, $30 per person. It's a fundraiser so that we can do scholarships and other things that we want to do to help fund our youth throughout the rest of the year. So come out, March 16th, Saturday, 10 a.m. We'll have a fantastic time.
Right, and if they say, well, you know, I have all these kids' responsibilities, I don't have the $30.
Go find the $30.
Yeah.
No, we're not doing that. If you can't find $30, there's a problem right there, and we need to talk about that. You need to see it as an investment.
Right.
Because what I found, man, is people do what they want to do.
That's right.
When they want to do it.
That's right.
And they'll find $30 to get into the club. They'll use their last $30 to get into the club, man.
Right. So investment. equals value.
Investments equal, again, if it's a good investment, it equals return.
Right.
Something that you're going to benefit from, and again, that organization is going to benefit from. And so please come out. Please, 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 please. Everyone is welcome. Again, it's not, quote unquote, a religious event.
No.
Because it's being
or a
held
black
at a
event.
church or a black event. But again, we want you to come out, $30 per person. Bring a friend. That's only $60. If you don't have a friend in your life that's worth you investing $30 into, then you ought to really kind of question if you really have placed any value in that friend.
Right.
Do you have some friends that you'd invest $30 for?
I have a lot of friends I'd invest $30 for.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I got some.
And some who will invest it in other people too.
Exactly.
So we want to create a chain. We want the house to be full. Yeah. Well, our time is almost up.
What?
Well, it is up. Not almost. But thank you again, Harold, for being here.
Man, it's been a great time.
And we'll be back in April. We're not
going to be back till April?
God, no, it's going to be a long break. But maybe before. But we'll definitely be back in April. And what we're going to do in April, we're going to start our programs. What we're going to do is encourage people, and it's going to be a program that's geared for everybody.
Okay.
But our object is to bring in the men.
Right.
What I mean by bring in the men is that, hey, we can say all we want to say and all this stuff, but unless we get together and reach out to them to teach them, they'll never learn.
Now, why don't you ever tell people about you're available for speaking engagements and that and tell them about Renaissance Man and how you have an etiquette program to teach our young people etiquette, and that's something that we've lost a flavor for.
Well, not only etiquette, but life skills.
Exactly.
Life skills. This is the Renaissance Man. You can reach area code 951-238-4720 or email me at info@therenaissanceman.es.
Amen.
All right. We'll see you in April. Thanks, world.